right. You're watching or listening to, depending on your preference, episode 71 of Infrastructure Matters. Dion, I think we're in trouble because Kimberly isn't with us this week. So we're going to touch some third rail topics that she would typically rein us in on. We're going to be as apolitical as possible when we talk about some of the happenings around AI ethics. We're going to talk Intel, Data Robot, SAP, and Databricks in the same room. That's going to be an interesting one. Of course, AI news and some internal. We've done some testing around Intel's Gaudi 3 accelerator. So a lot of great news. First off, well, let's start out with, I think I might have sold my Intel stock too soon.
Yeah, I think so. Intel stock surged this week unexpectedly, and there was a lot of speculation why. There's been a lot of criticism over Intel's leadership in the chip industry for the last decade, and it's gotten increasingly questionable, and the stock has really reflected that. But now the story is that Intel is getting help or may get help from TSMC to modernize and catch their fabs up. Now, why would a competitor like TSMC do this? The speculation is that is trying to head off tariffs. The Trump administration has expressed that and named Intel that they would like to see our chip companies do better, and they may put tariffs on Taiwan in order to bring that about. And this may be a proactive maneuver to head that off. So that's the speculation anyway.
Wow, that is interesting bedfellows, and we'll get into more interesting bedfellows in a second. What do you think this means for the AI accelerators, mobile? What's the downstream?
Well, I think we're headed for interesting times. There's only so much you can do to catch up a fad in the United States. Frankly, we've got more advanced laws around environmental protection, building codes. It takes longer to do things here. There's just some things. There's a limit to how much anyone can aid or accelerate a company in the United States, and there's a reason why. People don't want to plunk $6 to $12 billion down in a fab here if they can't get a return out of it. They can't do two nanometer anytime soon because of all the permitting and red tape and bureaucracy. And so, the question I think is TSMC is probably hoping for something out of this. They're trying to demonstrate something. I'm not sure they're going to be able to really help Intel in a dramatic way, but they may not need to. They may just get points for trying.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that similar to how there's always boutique manufacturers for, believe it or not, still 7 nanometer processes, stuff that's used in automotive all the time. TSMC, of course, will continue to lead the way when it comes to 2 nanometer and smaller, if you can imagine that. They have all 1.5 nanometer processes, the other day, which is insane. So I think there's plenty of capacity. TSMC has all of the work I think that they can handle right now, and why not win some points with helping Intel out? Too big to fail. So Data Robot acquires open source AI startup Agnostic, spelled with a Q. We're running out of domain names.
Yeah, it's terms were not announced. The Agnostic has a AI agent framework and application a portfolio that aligns well with Data Robot, which is a place where you can put all your data and run all your AI apps. There's going to be a lot of interest in creating a more consistent environment for AI instead of having all these patchwork, AI models and data lakes that you were doing RAG against, and all these things that. Platforms like Data Robot potentially allow you to bring a little bit of order to the chaos. But what they didn't have was anything to do with agents. And if you're not doing agent-based AI this year, if you're not putting that in your product platform, you are behind. And this allows Data Robot to to get into the AI agent space. It's unclear. Their agnostic has, I think they said 5,000 customers. If you consider most of those are probably small, medium-sized businesses, they probably needed this to get the R&D money to keep their AI agent portfolio going. Because if you're not acquiring your AI agent company this year, you won't be able to afford it next year. And
it's interesting how this market continues to move forward. We haven't covered it yet, but it seems like people are moving away from this idea of independent agents to agent workflows. So agents not necessarily doing, random chores like you would think a chat GTP would allow you to do, but workflows specific to, let's say, cash flow or order to cash or some business process in which agents are specialized and have some type of chain of action, programmability versus, just generically taking an agent. So this is moving much faster than most of us can follow.
It is. And I've actually spent the last month and a half or so doing a full survey of the AI agent-based space and a report that will come out at Hinchcliffe here in the next couple of weeks. And I talked to a lot of companies and a few CIOs that are doing something with agents, and it's all around service desk of some kind. It could be internal service desk, could be external, but it's about orchestrating some outcome for a stakeholder, an internal customer, an external customer. To touch a really big road service network, their CIO, and they say people only log into their website 2 or 3 times a year, and so they forget everything about it, and so they don't know how to change their address or update their payment system or anything like that. Now they can just log in. As long as they can log in, they can talk to a bot, say, "I changed my address." Like, great, what is your new address? And I'll update it in the system, right? That kind of thing. So we're still seeing these the crawl, walk, run thing where most people are at crawl with agents, and but that's the kind of thing that they're doing.
Yeah, it's it seems like just yesterday we were talking about AI assistants being kind of the future of AI, and that is quickly falling by the wayside. Like AI assistant becomes kind of a given. In our own email, Gemini has been activated, mixed results, in our email system. We're moving much faster than most enterprises can adopt this technology. Speaking of data and data lakes and cleaning up data and organizing data, a surprise to me, at least, both of us cover SAP and Databricks. SAP and Databricks announced a partnership in which SAP can resell Databricks into their customer with allowing SAP customers to use Databricks platform to analyze their data. I use the term hell is frozen over because I never thought something like this would happen. Basically, this idea that you want to do large data analysis, you want to across your entire data landscape, your SAP transaction data along with your flat data within your file system, other databases, etc., and come out with business insights, kind of the magic of these huge data analytic platforms. SAP has held this capability close to itself with its own cloud-based analytics platform. Mm-hmm. I'm shocked.
I think a lot of people were and confused because SAP has so many pre-existing offerings in this space. If you look at SAP Data Intelligence Cloud, SAP Critical Data Cloud, SAP Customer Data Cloud, SAP DataSphere, and SAP Analytics Cloud, and that's just some of them. Adding yet another data cloud, which is what they're calling us, powered by DataSphere, is this makes SAP look like they don't have a clear strategy. They're not explaining how this fits into all those other clouds, which one should be up at the top, or how do they sit off at the side and each one form a specific function. And it seems much more partnership-based in terms of strategy as opposed to actually, real organized product strategy. So I think a lot of people are scratching their head, but clearly SAP customers and Databricks customers want this,
And how much of you do you think is warding off the eventual I think it's going to be a commoditization of analytics by AI. This seems like I don't know if I've ever thought of this, but analytics as just a feature versus a standalone product.
Well, I mean, I think you make a good point. The commoditization is going to happen because everything's going to go into AI, and you're going to be able to pull out the most advanced analytics. Build me a 3D visualization of all of our sales processes over the last year, and boom, out it comes in. So you need access to the data, you need to all connect it. And where SAP, didn't have a clear story was how does SAP and Databricks coexist? This answers that question. The question is it a major problem? Is this obviously SAP thinks there's a revenue stream to be had there, which is really important because they're having a hard time getting a lot of the world to move off of perpetual licenses to subscriptions. So we're seeing they're announcing a number of these partnerships like they did with DataSteer before and now Databricks today. I think it's a race to the bottom for the most part. This is something you'll be able to be able to do relatively easily and straightforward across the enterprise quite soon.
And SAP has a critical problem ticking with this end of life of their legacy ECC product by 2030. SAP customers are notoriously difficult to get to upgrade. I think the latest number I saw that by 2025, up to 25% of their customers still will be on legacy ECC by 2030 and getting third-party support from somewhere else. So SAP is in essence competing against itself with this deadline. So, these are companies that have serious challenges. That's some of it is self-inflicted, and some of it is the competition against AI and the agility AI is bringing to organizations, or the expected agility, which will skip down into the rundown to big competitor and frenemy of SAP sometimes, because a lot of SAP runs on Oracle. Larry Ellison wants all of our data.
Yes, he does. And so it's hard to read much into what Larry says, given that he doesn't necessarily drive the entire industry like some of the other tech billionaires do. But yeah, he is suggesting, and he may be right about this, that unless we put all of our available data at a national level into a master database, and he's suggesting all available genomics too, so that we can marshal all of our data and organize as a nation to be competitive against China, that we're going to be at a disadvantage because China will do it. China is definitely going to do that. And of course, it's so self-serving because he thinks Oracle is the best place to do that. And I've done work with some of the other hyperscalers, like Bezos. Same thing. He thinks that only AWS is reliable and global enough to run a lot of important government services, and he thinks these hyperscalers have built these global infrastructures that will allow nations to compete on AI, nations to compete globally and on digital services, digital currencies, digital assets. Those are all big conversations that haven't really been come to the forefront, but with big changes in our presidential administration, these things now seem much more likely suddenly than they have been in the past.
Yeah, much of it seemed like big pie in the sky. Man, you were at the AWS reInvent just this past year, and we're talking about, this idea of putting digital currency on the blockchain. Now you're thinking, I've seen with Doge, this idea of putting all government transactions on the blockchain, and I'm all for transparency, but we end up with these really interesting dilemmas from a have and have nots perspective. And one of the things I wanted to highlight from this Ellison, a subset of the Ellison comment, was Vice President Vance in Paris announcing that, this administration wants to take the shackles off of AI and ethics. And I think his term was somewhere around something to the effect, we need to stop hand wrangling around ethical AI and just advance AI as fast as possible to beat China. All of the VCs celebrated the comment. They were like, "Yes, this is the way to beat China in AI." The consensus is that China is level with us when it comes to models, if not ahead of us when it comes to models. And when I say us, I mean Western
Yes.
towers and companies. And then as far as hardware, the U.S. and Western allies are ahead of China. And then people, the argument is that China is ahead when it comes to people, the people, process, and technologies. I think this rises an interesting dilemma for the enterprise. Usually, U.S. regulations have gated our access to some technologies. When they take those shackles off, of course, there's opportunity, but there's also challenges in a global environment. The EU seems to be going in a completely different direction than the U.S.
Well, and if you look at, responsible AI, I think is really the word more than ethical AI, because there's more than just being ethical that you have to do with AI. We talk about first principles. With great power comes great responsibility. And AI is the most powerful technology we have, and soon we'll be able to do things humans can't, as I've talked about super intelligence, in the last show. Who's gonna have access to the best super intelligence? That's going to be a competitive global race. Europe, on the other hand, is saying, well, we'd rather be responsible more than we would want to be number one. And they may win that bet if we end up having, which I think is likely, some accidents with AI where it's used in a place that causes significant harm somehow, as people put it in more and more critical places, and makes decisions without human intervention or human oversight, and bad things happen. Then Europe will be able to say, well, you can come here and use our AI because it's safer and more responsible. We actually have regulations. So they may win that bet. Who knows? And they're trying, because the EU just announced that they're trying to organize it at a national level across the EU. Because individually, the countries can't compete with the U.S. or China. But collectively, the EU's got 450 million people. They're bigger than the United States if they could get organized. So they've just committed $200 billion to their AI efforts at an EU level to compete with the U.S. and China. And, of course, their story is going to be they're going to do it best. They're going to do it best in terms of what's right for people. And, it's nice to have another horse in the race to see where that goes.
Yeah, diversity of ideas is just as important as competition, which actually brings me to a point we did not put in the rundown. I don't know how we missed this as big news. Elon Musk offered, and some other investors, a group, offered 97 point something billion dollars for OpenAI. And this is a little complicated. OpenAI is technically a non-for-profit. So I'm not quite sure how you offer to buy this is beyond my financial expertise, but essentially he's looking to take control of the non-for-profit that manages the for-profit OpenAI company for $97 billion. Sam Altman said in reply, no thanks, but I'm more than happy to buy Twitter for $9.7 billion.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see. The question is, the rumor is that the third run of Grok, so Grok 3, didn't go well. And so they don't have a model. They just spent an enormous amount of money. They don't have enough to retrain it. That's the rumor. Can't confirm whether it's true or not. But that's supposedly the reason why Musk is making some kind of move to at least get something out of it. I don't think I think OpenAI is actually worth more than that offer. But I think that there's secret covenants or stock or something. I mean, supposedly Musk divested himself from OpenAI, but he has some in on the offer, is my understanding, that gives him special privileges to make that. But I don't think it's going to happen. But there is some question about whether Grok will remain competitive, and so Musk had to do something.
Yeah, AI is moving much faster than we can keep up with, both on the software side and the hardware side. Internally speaking, our sister company, Signal 65, has published the results of their Gaudi 3 testing. And the TLDR, I suggest you go to signal65.com to download the full report. And if you want to really geek out on numbers, our colleague Russ Fellows wrote the report after all the testing, and we've been testing it for quite some time. Basically, it's on par with the H100, which if you kind of look back and say, well, H100s, what's the big deal? Well, DeepSeek was trained allegedly on H100s. Grok, Xi built their data center around H100s, their supercompute off H100s, while the B200s and the new chipsets from NVIDIA are all the rage. H100s and Gaudi 3 is absolutely data center level quality for doing inferencing and doing enough AI for the vast majority of the enterprises. Any thoughts in general around just the non-NVIDIA market around AI chips and AI chip acceleration?
Yes. And the big question is, in AI, it's what are developers going to use? And if it's not CUDA, there's a big question about, do I commit to something that may not last? It doesn't have the heritage. It doesn't have the staying power. CUDA is not going to go anywhere. Everyone feels completely confident making these very, very large investments on top of that stack. And the question is, chips like Gaudi are new kids on the block with unproven track record. Sure, they're doing great today, but can they sustain the competitive race? So is betting on Gaudi good? Is it going to pull ahead? Is it cost competitive? But most importantly, can they get developers to use it? Developers don't know anything about it, and so that's the real question. It is a huge headwind to break out in AI chips right now. It's just NVIDIA's got a lock on the market.
Yeah, I will say if this was Intel of 2 or 3 years ago, we would say, well, it's Intel. Now we're saying, well, it's Intel. It's we could put a lot of faith in Intel 2 or 3 years ago that they would just spin their way to market parity, if not dominance. Now this Intel has way more problems than just catching up in AI development, AI platforms. They did a lot to normalize the access to CUDA and CUDA Core, so that they could hide away the complexity. But you're absolutely right, folks. Like DeepSeek's show what's possible when you program to a machine level and bypass.
That's right there. That's the Intel's advantage. They need to tell that story that some of the most competitive AIs are not using CUDA. They're getting the best performance by going bare metal, and so that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think someone should commission our Signal 65 folks to do that comparison, to say, if I went straight machine level on Gaudi 3, what does that get me relative to B100, 200, or whatever the latest Blackwell chipset is from NVIDIA? And is it worth the investment? What does it mean for my power and cooling? One of the things that we haven't talked about when it comes to DeepSeek and being able to basically run the entire model on a single Blackwell chip on like a Digix, which is just air cooled. What does that mean for the power and cooling race, specifically in the enterprise data center?
Yeah. Well, and I think that this whole conversation neglects the way that CIOs think about sourcing. The job of the CIO is business continuity at the end of the day. That's the only time they ever really get a phone call from anybody is when something doesn't work. Other than that, they, occasionally they get a request, well, we'd like to do this or that, or use AI, but so they're looking for a stable, reliable partner. And the question is the Chinese government has been running these drills around Taiwan that have raised a lot of supply chain questions about whether something's going to happen within the next 24 months. That seems to be the analysis. They're basically dry running, a blockade of the, it's a tiny island at the end of the day. And with everything changing and all eyes elsewhere in the world on all these other geopolitical issues, there's a real concern that China may make their move. And so what I'm hearing from CIOs, in my last CIO roundtable that I participated in with a bunch of Fortune 500, like Fortune 100 CIOs is that they're looking to hedge their bets so that they don't have operational discontinuity when they can't get the chips they need to run their business. So they are looking at that level. And this is not the developer level, but developers are the kingmakers. But the CIOs now increasingly, their eyes looking, what are my other choices? And this is about Gaudy's really their biggest chance. If they can tap into that demand to hedge bets about what's going to happen in the world that may cut U.S. enterprises or everyone off from NVIDIA chips, that's a big deal.
Yeah, between tariffs, geopolitical challenges when it comes to borders, we as a industry are appreciative that I don't do logistics. I'm just happy that I'm not into the business of figuring out where I'm going to get supplies. The big OEMs of the world, Dell, HPE, Lenovo, Cisco, the people who have to put these systems together in the endpoint really have to think through how do they, one, not get on the wrong side of each one of these nations from a political perspective, but also able to mitigate some of this cost and access risk. It is an interesting conversation, and we're here for it. Dion, let's put in a plug since Camberley isn't here. We can put in a plug for our CXO roundtables.
Oh, yes.
You don't know this, but we just signed on yet another client as of, I think, a few minutes ago to do another CXO roundtable. You want to fill us in on what is a CXO? We call them CXO salons.
Yes, exactly.
What do we do at these things?
Well, these salons are for organizations that want to directly tap into the zeitgeist. Or, what are CIOs, what are CTOs, chief digital officers, if you prefer, any of those digital CXO roles that you have. We've built up a community of such practitioners over the years. We can bring them together to think about and discuss the challenges of the day, evaluate new product offerings. So, and their motivation is, increasingly they're not feeling like they don't have a voice in a lot of product development in the enterprise products because it's moving so fast and being driven by Silicon Valley innovation. That a lot of their specific, unique enterprise needs aren't being represented. This gives them a chance to get with leading product companies who are trying to build the future and get feedback from them. But it can be used for many different things, just as a sounding board, as a forum to understand what the major issues of the day are around a specific topic that affects that given a product offering. So there's a variety of ways. But if you want digital CXOs in a room, we have gotten good at facilitating that, bringing them together and creating productive, useful, actionable outcomes. Concrete stuff comes out of these, and everyone really seems to enjoy the process on both sides.
I know I enjoy the process of hosting these on both, as you said, on both sides, the CXOs, the various executives from actual end customers, and the vendor, the IT enterprise vendor get wonderful insights. And we get the pleasure of just hosting these things and watching these conversations unfold. There's really not much that we have to do other than throw in a question and watch the magic happen and keep everyone on track. If you want to learn more about these, you can visit us on the web, thefuturegroup.com. Dion, as usual, I've had a wonderful time. If you're thinking you've learned so much about the tech industry from these Infrastructure Matter episodes, you should share them with your grandmother.
Exactly.
It will help her make more friends, whether she's at home enjoying the soothing sounds of Keith and Dion, or if she has a social group that she can listen to this while paying bid with. It's a gift we're recording this on Valentine's Day. So it's a great Valentine's Day gift for any of your grandmothers in your network. Until then, we'll see you next episode of Infrastructure Matters with BB72.